Brynham da, good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock, so we will start the meeting. Good afternoon and welcome to the hybrid meeting of Education, Skills and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of January 2025. I am Councillor Rebecca Phillips and I will be chairing this meeting. Before we move on to the next agenda item, please note that this meeting will be recorded. Please can you ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Can members and officers who are present in the chamber please use their microphones when speaking. When asked to raise your hand, can members who are virtually viewing this meeting raise your electronic hand, and members who are in the chamber please raise your physical hand. For those members virtually viewing this meeting, please can you keep the chat function for urgent IT issues and not for questions or comments. I wish to remind members signing in remotely of their legal obligation to have their cameras switched on during the meeting, please, in order to be seen and heard whilst participating in council business. Now I will move on to agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest, please?
I can't see any declarations, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, budget 2025 to 2026.
Sorry, Councillor Rahman, did you have a declaration of interest?
I did, Chair. I'm really sorry. I did click on raise my hand, but it just delayed. There's an item there around Aberavon Seafront. I work at a restaurant which is quite close to Aberavon Seafront. Well, in fact, it's at the Aberavon Seafront, so I would like to declare a personal interest on that.
That's fine, Councillor. I can send the declaration form to you.
Thank you.
You was declaring interest on the Aberavon Seafront item. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3, budget 2025-26. The report included on the scrutiny agenda is the consultation on the 2025-26 budget proposals. We will today be looking at elements that fall under the remit of this committee only. Your comments from this meeting will form part of the formal consultation response for the budget. Members are encouraged to put forward any alternative proposals which can then be considered once the consultation period has ended. Andrew, do you have anything additional to add to the circulated report, please?
Yes, please. Just a short introduction, and then, if with your agreement, Chair, I'm going to ask my heads of service to go through the report line by line. We'll stop after each one, ask for any questions, and then once we've dealt with the questions, we move on. Is that okay with everybody? And is that a efficient way of doing it? Yeah. So just before I I hand over to Chris Saunders. So the basis for these efficiencies / cuts are to protect jobs and services. When we, as a senior leadership team, set about coming up with the required efficiencies for obviously the corporate body, Mr. Jones on my right hand side here so eloquently asked for them many months ago. That was basically the thinking. We want to protect jobs and services as far as is possible, and I think what you have before you in the main achieves that. Certainly there's no compulsory redundancies directly related to these efficiencies. There are some risks within these, and I need to talk to you about those risks. Some of our, as you can see, some of our proposals are based on generating further income, doing more activities, generating income. There's always a risk around that because some facilities, in Markham Park is a good example, the footfall there can be dependent on the weather. It can be as sort of fragile as that. There's some procurement processes where some of our efficiencies are based around, and also the completion of some capital projects like Ponte Arts Centre, for instance. So we're sort of taking some assumptions that these projects are going to be finished, in time. The other assumption we're making, and we're in virtually the middle of January at the moment. I was with Welsh Government colleagues on Friday, talking about the macro budget across Wales. And as we sit here today, I'm not aware of any grants which are likely to be terminated or removed, because some of our efficiencies are linked to putting some core costs against grants. So as we sit here today, not aware of any grant which is finishing. I am aware of one which is going to be cut because of what Welsh Government are planning to do in terms of a national picture. So, I think the risk around some of those what we're proposing to put some core costs against grant are certainly minimal at the moment. So without further ado, Chair, I'll hand over to Mr. Saunders, and he'll take you through the first line, and then we'll take questions after each one, if that's okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So as Andrew said, I'll happily take you line by line through these. So the first line on there was Markham Country Park, and that's a £150,000 saving. So that's the second year in a series of savings for Markham Country Park to try and get it as close to zero subsidy as possible as a non-statutory service. The plan at the moment is to do that through one voluntary redundancy that's just been signed off, actually, which flattens the structure slightly, and then improve income around things like car parking and events. And there's a report signed off by Cabinet yesterday, actually, around car parking, and it was the report that came to Scrutiny last time around, I think it was. So we are working on the parks business plan, and as I say, next year there's an even bigger target currently in the sort of the offering for the future year potentially as well, of which will be much more difficult to achieve. As Andrew said, a lot of it's based on income, and we are doing our best to get the team and the site into a position whereby it gets as close to zero subsidy as it possibly can.
Thank you very much, Chris. We do have some questions on this item. Firstly, Councillor Saifra Harman, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I understand Chris is right. We have talked about this report back in December at the scrutiny meeting. I just wanted to ask two questions. One is in relation to enforcement. How would we ensure that adequate enforcement takes place? Because that's quite key to the car parking proposal that is set out in the report. And also, in terms of consultation, is there any further explanation on how the consultation will take place? These are the two questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Chris, please.
Thank you. So the report that was agreed at Cabinet yesterday actually gives us the authority to commence that consultation around the car parking fees and charges. So as part of the off-street parking order, so we'll now advertise that. It'll go out for comments, and then those comments will be presented back to Cabinet in due course. So whether we get that in time for 1st of April, I'm not entirely sure at this moment in time, but it's going to be as close as that as we can possibly get it. So there's a consultation period as part of that statutory process. And in terms of enforcement, you're absolutely right. It is fundamental to it, and we have costed in using some of our staff to provide that enforcement capacity that is needed to do that across the three parks, actually. So we've got to set that stall out from day one, otherwise it doesn't work.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harman, are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Is there any way that an officer could explain the consultation process, please?
The consultation process on the car parking?
That's correct, yes.
So as I understand it, it gets advertised. So the off-street parking order gets advertised. I think it's in the local paper or online, and there's a set period. It's a statutory process. It's not something the council decides. It's something that we've got to do to get the legislation in place to be able to enforce. So I think it's open for, I'm assuming 28 days. I'm not entirely sure. And then that consultation will close, and we will then bring back those comments back through the Cabinet process.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe if we could get the definite details on that to members, and then obviously we can circulate them to constituents as well then. Thank you, Saif. And Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you. I wondered, so these savings this year, as I think you mentioned, Chris, are on top of savings last year, and we anticipate more next year. How are we doing with the savings in year? at the current time, and what's the implications if we don't make those savings?
So I think you're also probably referring to last year, aren't you, a little bit as well? So last year we actually made the savings in terms of what we were due to do in terms of the sort of driving the income and the cuts we had to do. It was the utility costs and the vacancy management that pushed us over the edge and caused us with an overspend. As things currently stand, that looks a bit more stable, and we are looking to come in pretty much on budget for this year with some of the changes they've made, or we've made.
Thank you very much, Chris. If we can move on to Pontardawe Arts Centre, please.
Can do. So there's a £40,000 saving being proposed for Pontardawe Arts Centre, and that continues to reduce the subsidy of the site, which is currently about 175,000, of which, just to point out, following up the comment around Mount we probably won't make that this year. We've forecasted an overspend this year because of the closure of the site through the capital works. That whole plan is really centered around the new cinema and the bar and cafe, which I have to say, last time I was on site was looking fabulous. I'm really excited about being able to open that. So that's really where it will be driven from. There are some risks around, as Andrew mentioned earlier, around if the project overruns slightly, that we will eat into some of the year to do that, and we're doing our best to try and manage that very actively with the team at the moment.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Reynolds' question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. As someone who attends at Pontardawe Arts Centre regularly and loves having it there in our community, thinks it's a wonderful facility, I wondered, you've given some information about how that work is going and the likelihood of it being done and being able to move forward. I'm aware that staff have been coping admirably, trying to keep the facilities working on tables rather than the bar and keeping services going there. But is it likely to overrun by much? And is there any further update? And is there an opportunity perhaps for members to go and actually take a look at the works at all?
So in terms of the overrun, I think there's a project meeting. I think it's early next week with the contractors. There were some issues with them over Christmas that I don't really want to share publicly, but I don't do it privately. At the moment, we're talking sometime in April. I think it was the end of March. It's currently sometime in April. I will know a bit more about that next week sometime. I'm sure that a bit closer to the time we can arrange for members to go and have a look around. At the moment, it's still a building site technically, and we'd have to make some arrangements to do that. But I'm quite happy to try and facilitate that. And you're right, actually, just to pick up the staff point. They've worked really admirably in some difficult circumstances, trying to keep the place going. It had to close for a bit because there's no power, but trying to make sure that we're sort of putting things on. And I don't think it's been the best customer experience either, and the customers have seemed to have stuck with us through some of that as well. So very positive at the moment.
Thank you. It would be good to be able to go.
Yeah, thank you very much, both. I know we're all really looking forward to seeing it reopen again. So thank you very much to everyone for their work on that. If we can move on, Chris, to indoor leisure, please. Thank you.
Yep, sure. So members will remember when the extension to the Celtic leisure contract was brought back later, or mid last year, wasn't it? So I think it was September last year. So this 175,000 here really is in relation to the sort of the efficiency element that we worked into the Celtic leisure contract. So we took out about 460,000, I think it was, from the management fee this current financial year, and we're still seeing that trend going in the right direction, trying to get some of those costs down. Just a continuation of that. We hope that will continue through those 5 years.
Lovely, diolch. And I've got Councillor Rogers in this item, please. Diolch.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Chris. Just a little one relating to Celtic Leisure and the Neath Leisure Centre. obviously living in Garrickstown here, as I do. We've got a new pure gym opened up at the bottom of the road. Will that have any effect on our trading improvement? Have we got any indications at the moment, because it's been open since January, please?
I haven't got the direct figures from Celtic on how they're trading at this precise moment in time. In terms of January, we often, obviously we see a pickup in membership and trade through this time. In fact, I tried to get into a class the other day and couldn't get one, so it's clearly quite busy. I wouldn't expect it would have a fundamental effect on Celtic Leisure. Is a fairly different offer, pure gym, and we serve a slightly different market, but it will come down to being able to react flexibly to some of the marketing, some of the offers, and continue to be proactive around those areas. So Celtic Leisure will be monitoring that really carefully.
Lovely, thanks, Chris.
Diolch. Councillor Nathan Goldup-John, please.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And I'm just wondering, picking up on the risks column that is highlighted in the papers, the national insurance treatment. Obviously, the UK government has come in with enhanced employers' national insurance. And I was just wondering, who would that fall on? Would that fall on Celtic Leisure, or is that somehow going to come back to us?
I'll take that if that's okay. So at the moment, we're assuming in terms of Celtic Leisure, that cost will fall on us. So in terms of the subsidy we pay them, they've included that uplift. What we are hoping in our planning is that the UK government will actually fully fund NI, both for our own staff and commission services, but there's uncertainty around that. So to give Celtic certainty, we've built that into the management fee, but we're hoping if all things work as we expect, we get it back. So.
Yeah, certainly something to keep an eye on. Thank you, Nathan. Diolch. Any other questions on indoor leisure? Councillor Reynolds, please.
I'd like to follow up on that answer, actually. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you for that. And that was really informative, because we have a number of organisations that provide services, for the council, effectively, not least within education, Flying Start services, for example, who are probably going to be hit by the NI increase and won't have any way out of it. So it is concerning that that some may benefit and others won't. And I just think we need to be aware of that and just register it in this committee.
Yeah, happy to note that. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, quite correct. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Diolch. Any other questions? I don't see any. So if we could move on. Chris, still with us. Another one on indoor leisure regarding the closure of Pontardawe swimming pool.
Yeah, so as members are aware, or very aware, we had to make the decision to close Pontardawe swimming pool on health and safety grounds back towards the middle of last year. This is simply the subsidy, really, that it came with, that hasn't been transferred. The sort of residual income and costs haven't been captured elsewhere. So it's still haven't had that full year trading. It's a little bit unknown in terms of that. This is the sort of working with Celtic colleagues, the figure that we're putting in on the basis of that. I was going to make the point really on this one, I suppose, is that we're not closing Pontardawe swimming pool to make a saving. Yeah, we close Pontardawe swimming pool on health and safety grounds. This is the associated budget impact.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. Diolch yn fawr. And Councillor Wolford, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. My question around that was, does that saving include or take out what we're going to be paying for feasibility studies for a new site and construction of a new pool?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't take out the feasibility. That's in train, and that's happening. So we're currently in the standstill period for the appointment of those consultants, and I think that finishes today or tomorrow. So we should be able to appoint them very shortly. So that's all accounted for elsewhere. And in terms of a new pool, that's in terms of what those costs might be. This is the operating element of it, and I would imagine that if the council at some point in the future makes a decision can afford to make a decision to build a new pool, then we'd have to build this back in, or whatever the element of it would be at that point.
Thank you. Good.
Diolch. And Councillor Reynolds, please.
Thank you. As I understand it, that saving should be attributed to Celtic Leisure and not to the council. So I'm wondering what it's doing here. But I also am concerned that there is a cost that's allocated in another committee in terms of, I believe, in terms of costs of the looking after the site and demolition of the old pool. So, I worry about that saving and the overall amount saved or gained or lost or whatever within this process.
I'm not aware of another set of costs gone in elsewhere. I know that the demolition costs will be borne, I think, through capital. I think you've talked about, haven't you? So that's in train. That should happen again fairly shortly. So I'm not aware of another set of figures. I'm sorry, I can't remember what the other point was. The original point. That the cost, the saving for the operating costs of the facility is Celtic Leisure. Yeah, well, effectively it's Celtic Leisure's trading, but we've been operating on a sort of open book process with Celtic Leisure for a few years since COVID, on the basis that it's a very sort of flexible arrangement in that if they're making that saving, that gets passported straight back through to us, and they've been very good at coming in slightly below budget last year, for example, and that gets passported back to us because as a council, we've been very good in making sure that we've covered their additional costs through COVID and through the cost of living side as well. So it goes both ways, I suppose. That's really what I'm saying.
The saving is also, you're making a saving because of loss of running costs, but also there's a lack of income. So, what's the trade-off here? Yeah, that is the net figure. That's the net, the net cost, the net subsidy, on basis that some of the income's been moved across for things like swimming lessons where people have transferred, but 100% of people won't have been transferred, if that makes sense. So there's a bit of art and there's a bit of science behind that figure, given the timing of it. Could I bring Andrew in here, please? Thank you.
Yeah, just I don't know if this helps, but effectively, Sonny, you're right. It's an efficiency which has been delivered because Celtic used to operate Pontardawe swimming pool. So the way we're presented in this sort of table is it's a reduction, effectively a reduction in the management fee that we have to give Celtic because they're running one less facility. That's been built into, is being built into the annual negotiation in terms of the management fee for Celtic next year. And as Chris has just said, that's our best estimate of the net position, because what we don't know is how many swimmers from Pontardawe will go to Neath, and hopefully if every swimmer from Pontardawe went to Neath, we'd capture all the income. That's not going to happen for a variety of different reasons. So it's our best estimate on where we think the efficiency from the closure of a facility, but it's essentially a reduction in the management fee that we're giving to Celtic to operate our facilities.
Thank you. Maybe that needs clarifying in the table then as well. And yeah, I understand a number of those people will have gone up the valley or across to Amherford.
Okay, noted. Thank you very much. Any other questions on this item, please? No, I don't see any. So moving on to Aberavon Seafront, please, Chris. Thank you.
So again, this is a second year of a 2-year savings. So there's 25,000 in this year as well, and will be generated by additional events and attractions on the seafront, of which we're currently in that planning phase, and of every confidence we'll manage to achieve that.
Great, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Paddison, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. When I applied to the Chair to come to this meeting, because I don't sit on education, this wasn't an item I wanted to speak, but she's been indulgent with me. I just wanted to voice my support for anything of this nature. I'm sure the people want more seaside attraction type events, and when we do have events down there, they're very well attended. So I just wanted to say, looking forward to that as a local member.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's something we can all agree with there. Thank you for attending as well, Councillor Paddison. And Councillor Wolford, please. No, nothing on this item. Okay, no problem. Any other questions on Aberavon Seafront? No, I don't see anyone. Okay, so we'll move on to the Education Learning Resource Service, please.
Thank you. So the LRS Education Learning Resource Team sits within the library service, and they currently sort of provide sort of reprographics and printing and services like that, mainly to schools. They currently break even or about break even, and we're just trying to see if there's an opportunity to sort of whether they can work a little bit more commercially, whether that's attracting more business within the council, or whether that's so the rest of the council services buying their printing or whatever else might be from there, or trying to be a bit more commercial and go out to the market. So we've got a member of staff helping them put the business plan together on that, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to achieve something there. I'd say it's not a new concept. I know they've sort of tried to do some of this before, so there are some risks around it. We just need to make it stick this time.
Lovely, diolch. I've got Councillor Reynolds on this, please. Thank you.
I'm fine with the answers that have come through. Thank you.
Great. Any further questions on this? No. Great. Can we move on to libraries, please, then, Chris?
And you'll be pleased to know this is the last of my list. So libraries, there's a £10,000 proposed saving for really stopping the purchase of DVDs. There's very limited demand for them now. I think only a couple of libraries have got them, and that's sort of being, run down. They're not being asked from the public anymore. So really, this it's just a straight cut, and I don't really see any particular service impact on that.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions on this unless anybody has one today. No, I don't see anyone. Diolch yn fawr, Chris. Thank you for all your work on this. So we're moving on now to Rhiannon Crowhurst, please. And the first is the home to school transport. Diolch, Rhiannon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're right. The first one is the home to school transport. Just to give some background, just in case anyone doesn't know, the home to school transport is jointly operated between the Environment Directorate and Education. We hold the budget, they do the work in terms of the operational stuff. We work with sort of pupils and families within that. So this budget proposal is to continue really with the externally led review of the existing arrangements. We're about a year in now, just about, not quite. And I'm happy to take any questions, really. It is what it is. Thank you.
Lovely, diolch. Members will be aware that we are in the process of arranging a joint scrutiny meeting between us and Environment. But I know you do have some questions today. And first up, we've got Councillor Reynolds, please.
Yes, I say Rhiannon knows some of my questions off by heart in terms of some of this, and we really do look forward to that meeting. I have real concerns because my understanding is that we appear to have taken on or renewed or maintained a contract, and I'm being careful here because I understand the constraints, but please stop me if I transgress, where there have been concerns, and we are yet to know that, and yet we're looking at possible savings coming from that contract. So I'm dubious about this and really want to know if, when we have the special meeting, there are ongoing concerns. Is this saving achievable going forward? Thank you.
I suspect there probably is a number of questions around home to school transport today, so maybe I can head some of these off at the pass. I understand that the scrutiny meeting last week, there were some questions around this, and I think the outcome of that is something that the chair just alluded to, which is a joint scrutiny meeting, which I think is definitely the way to sort of handle this, because as Rhianna's just explained, if you like, the nuts, bolts mechanics of home to school transport, or the commissioning or the contracting, actually the management, the governance arrangements around the, first of all, home to school transport per se, but also this contract that we have with the provider is in place, and they manage that. Our involvement in it, we hold the budget, and therefore, in many ways, we deal with the risk, because obviously the £500,000 we're talking about there is for us to deal with as an education, and therefore, if those aren't achieved, I'm as keen to understand if we're going to achieve them or not, because that gives me a real problem and headache as it gives you. So I think and we hold a strategy, obviously. So we hold strategy and budget. The mechanics are dealt with elsewhere. It's not quite as straightforward as that, because there's involvement around things like risk assessments around PAs on routes and stuff like that. So it's very much a joint effort. And most of the time it works really, really well. So I think what members have decided to do in terms of having a joint scrutiny is exactly the right thing, which will enable members to ask officers who are present at that time whatever questions you have. You'll have both sets of officers in the room, and obviously you can get to the bottom of what your concerns are, and you can get responses in that light. Just in terms of that £500,000, I chaired a meeting with the consultants just before Christmas. There were some other officers who were in the room today with me. Assurances were given that if we do certain things, that that £500,000, it's certainly possible to achieve those efficiencies, but they are based on us undertaking certain sort of routes to market. But of course, since this medium-term financial plan was put together, and this £500,000 forms part of a longer savings sort of plan, things have changed. I mentioned risks earlier. Somebody else mentioned NI. The NI position has changed for transport providers. The minimum wage has changed for transport providers. So, if you like, the macro environment has having a direct impact on our ability to generate savings from this particular thing. So I think the joint scrutiny, the work around that is very much needed. And I believe there's a meeting set up with the respective chairs, with the Council's Monitoring Officer Craig, very soon to arrange that meeting. So hopefully that gives you some information. I know that won't give you any comfort, because there are quite clearly risks around this, and I wouldn't hide from that.
Thank you. Councillor Wolford, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Andrew and also David Griffiths will be fed up with me asking these questions regarding this matter. Thank you for that explanation there. And yes, I think it's important for us to have this joint scrutiny meeting. I certainly put that forward, as I sit on both committees. What I'd like to know is, by the time we have that meeting, or even before if possible, can we have a report on the performance so far that these consultants have produced? I believe the contract is over 3 years, and the savings were meant to be over a 3-year period. Well, we're well into that contract now. So could we have a report or a spreadsheet of what savings have been made to date and their performance in producing those savings?
Much of that, well, at least some of that information is provided in the quarterly budget monitoring reports, but I suspect you want more detail around that. Craig's not here. The only reason I'm looking for the head of legal services is because I'm thinking about the commercial sensitivity of it. But I would imagine, yes, you can be provided with, but I think you need to be very specific about what it is you're looking for, because we brought consultants in to help us establish savings, not the onus isn't completely on them, because much of the work that they need to do, they're reliant on us to provide them with, well, lots of different things, information being the main thing, and other technical things around the use or not of what is known as the DPS, which enables them to tender. So it's quite it gets a bit messy, it gets quite technical, but they were brought in to help us achieve the savings, not achieve the savings per se, themselves. So the financial figures are easy to provide, and there's no two ways about that. If you want to have information on the performance of that particular company, that's a much more difficult thing to provide, and I think much of that will probably be eked out in the scrutiny committee. I would, because that's a conversation rather than a spreadsheet. The figures are easy to provide. If you want to get underneath of the performance, that's a much more difficult sort of report, if you like, because it's not black and white, I suppose, or it's not as simple as that. I know that's probably not the answer you wanted, but that's the truth of it. It's more complicated than just if they were the only people involved in efficiencies, then it would be easy, wouldn't it? But they're not. It's very much a joint effort.
It's something myself and Councillor Percy will discuss with Craig when we meet with him next week, going forward, if that's
okay. Yeah, I was going to come back and just say, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, figures are important, but these figures will be intrinsically linked to the performance of these consultants and what threads they've told our departments to follow in consultation. So they've obviously consulted what threads they're going to follow, how they're going to make improvements, how they're going to make savings. So that's what I was looking for is, firstly, yes, obviously the financial, but how they've achieved that to date.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just confirm, Councillor Wood, did you use the word threats or threads then?
Threads.
That's right, then.
Not threats.
I thought I'm missing something here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think. No. No. It might be useful that because, as I said, Rebecca and Sean are going to get together. So I'm talking on your behalf now, but maybe the concerns that members want to get out of that joint meeting, if you can feed them into Sean and Rebecca, and then that'll help you shape the conversation and the joint meeting, which is obviously needed.
Lovely, diolch. Thanks, everyone. I've got Councillor Rogers, please.
Lovely, thanks, Chair. Yeah, coming back a bit, Andrew. Bob has probably headed a bit off. The consultancy, is it running for the full 3 years? Because I wasn't sure over seems a long time to be consulting on. Usually we consult and then run with the recommendations. Just a little time check on timescale, I am, please, Andrew. Thank you.
Certainly, it was a 3-year contract we entered into. Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Nathan Gold of John, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I share the concerns that the fellow councillors and members of the committee have of this, and I'm sure we can thrash that out during that joint committee meeting. But I was just wondering if you could share with us now some of the suggestions or recommendations they've made to date on some of the efficiencies and some of the savings that are included in this. Because I note what you say, that they're just giving us the information and then it's up to us to implement. But £500,000 is an awful lot of money, and that must be coming from somewhere. So I'd be keen to have one or two. Yeah, you know what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Yeah, just use 2 examples. So the £500,000 next year is predicated on another retendering exercise. So retendering of a number of contracts. I forget how many. It doesn't really matter. The contracts are up for renewal. We need to retender. When Edge scoped this work, they looked at that, they understood that, and reasonably from the market they would expect to secure X percentage of saving on each contract, and that's where that figures come from, and a reduction in the number of passenger assistants that we are employing, not employing, but attaching to routes at the moment. So those are the concepts that were used to come up with this savings target. Now, it isn't quite true that Edge just tell us what to do and then we do it. It's much more interrelated than that, and that's why I was trying to say it's a bit more complicated than, these are 2 teams who are meant to work together on the same thing. So if we are going to retender 100 and something routes, quite clearly our legal department, our finance department, Edge themselves, and our passenger transport are intrinsically involved in all of that. And they all have to play their part at the right time, if we're going to try and secure these savings. There is there's a methodology as well in terms of tendering, which Edge believe is a successful way to reduce costs. Last year, that didn't happen. You need to understand in that joint scrutiny why that didn't happen, because that's really important. So, as I say, lots of this detail will come out in that joint scrutiny meeting. But essentially, the efficiencies are around making sure we've got the right number of contracts for the number of children that we have a legal obligation to transport. Every one of those contracts needs to be the most efficient as in terms of tendered, tender contract, legally safe, compliant, etc. And to make sure that we're not building in additional costs where they're not needed, and referring, of course, to things like passenger assistance. We don't want to put passenger assistance on a route where they're not needed. We do definitely want to put passenger assistance on routes where they are needed. So, as I said, there's lots of people involved in all of this. It isn't just the consultants.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. And yeah, I'll take this to the joint scrutiny, but
duly unsatisfied with my response.
This whole line item makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie. And the whole externally led review, whatever's gone on there, I think we really do need to thresh that out and really understand what's going on, because, education is a cornerstone of someone's future. And if that goes wrong, then they could be wrong for life. And this just, the whole thing makes me really uncomfortable. But I do take duly unsatisfied is correct, yeah.
But I wouldn't want any member leaving this room or the virtual room thinking that any of this work, including the work that the council does or the work that Edge does, together or separately, has any impact whatsoever on a child's entitlement to transport. That has not changed at all. None of this work, none of the things that have gone well, none of the things that have gone badly over the last 12 months have any impact whatsoever on the child's entitlement to transport free of charge to their designated school. I can categorically give you that assurance. So we're not messing about with children's future. I wouldn't have that in my position. And all we're trying to do is make it less costly, basically.
Thank you. Marie Caddick, please.
I just wanted to ask, Chair, is this joint meeting, will it be open to all members of your committee? Yes, I was thinking of myself.
I can check on that, Marie. It is related to schools, education.
Okay, yes, well, transport is
transport to schools. But I will double check that with Craig before the meeting, and I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions? Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a bit of clarification. You were going to come to recommendations at the end of your meeting. Are these two lines exempt because they're going to be discussed at a separate meeting? The ones where you're going to have the joint scrutiny. So you're going to ask members of your committee. I'm sorry, I'm not.
The recommendation is just that we scrutinise the proposals and to suggest alternatives, as we don't have any alternatives at the moment. We're not approving the recommendations at all today.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to primary school cleaning. Oh, sorry, Nathan.
Can I just confirm that we'll have that joint scrutiny meeting before the budget is passed? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I've never known, as I understand it, our co-opted members in education are full members of our scrutiny committee, and therefore I would be appalled if those members were ruled out.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be the case, but we'll just double check with Craig.
There are some exceptions, the co-opted members, so we will double check. So we will double check that.
Lovely. Thank you. Shall we move on to primary school cleaning, please? Rhiannon, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully a little simpler to explain, to go through. Right, so this budget saving is based on, and members will probably remember this was in last year's budget as well. At the minute, primary school cleaning isn't fully recharged to the schools. We pick up the additional costs. Last year we put a proposal into to fully recharge them. It didn't happen. They were only recharged for a certain amount. This is about going through the second year of the recharge. So again, they're not going to be charged the full cost recovery. It'll be phased over 2 years, and it's about at the minute we are bearing the costs, and this is about the schools taking some of that cost back because they don't pay the full amount for what the cleaning service costs them. Just to give you a bit of background, really, they pay for a basic service, they pay for the cleaners, they pay for the materials and the costs. But the service they get, we like to say, is a gold star service, because if anything happens in those schools, if they have an outbreak of norovirus, or if there's an accident, there was an incident a couple of weeks ago where a ceiling came down and the school, the area where that was in the school is flooded. Our officers were straight out there. They put dehumidifiers in there. They cleaned it up, and and there was no charge to the school for that. Well, obviously, as things are increasing, that gap is getting wider. So this is about closing the gap a little bit. I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Councillor Reynolds, please.
I wanted to raise the issue of deficit budgets in schools, and I wondered if we could have confirmation to this committee now of approximately how many schools are likely to be in deficit by the end of this year. And we know that the biggest charge to school budgets is staffing, and the only way they can truly save money is on staffing. So the more costs that fall on them, the less money they've got to spend on staff to teach and to make things happen. And or we see a decline in the quality of cleaning. And I'm really concerned that we have the right measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Yes, you're correct. It is coming down to choices like this in terms of the education budgets. There's around, I think, 22 schools at the minute with a deficit budget. These vary obviously in amount. Some are very small, some are not so small. But yes, that is the choice really on whether we implement this or not. Is that money is either coming out of our service, which, as I say, the gap is getting bigger, or it's coming through the schools. And I think it's probably worth saying that 150,000 is set across all the schools, and it's proportional to the size of the school. It's proportional to the number of rooms that are being cleaned, and the number of staff needed to clean them, and things like that. So it's not a blanket figure that goes across them all. It is sort of measured, and there is a sort of sense check to it, if you like, and a calculation involved. Yes, that's. I can only say yes, really. Sorry.
Thank you. Andrew, please.
Rhiannon's exactly right, and so you, Councillor Reynolds, the position you just described. Nobody wants to put additional costs onto schools any less than me, but that's what this is. There's no two ways about it. The position you described in schools is exactly the same as the local authority. At the moment, the local authority, the directorate, is effectively subsidising cleaning in our primaries. Most of the secondaries do their own cleaning. We do have special schools and 1 or 2 of our secondary schools, but in the main, this is primary schools, and some of those primary schools are in deficit. And you're right; they may have to make staffing adjustments as a result of these additional charges, or make decisions to get their cleaning elsewhere. But the local authority is in exactly the same position. If we don't reduce our costs, and this is one way that we are suggesting we can reduce our costs, we will be making staff, reductions, etc. Or, well, there is no more money at the moment. So these are our very difficult choices. We've been at this a long time, as you well know. So we're we've been into the things that we don't want to do for many years now, and this just is another one of those things that I wouldn't want to do. To be fair to members, past and present, when we've put this forward previously, we've spread the cost, so the impact is felt over a number of years rather than 1 year, and that's a good thing, and that's been welcomed by head teacher and governors. But we're back, and again, those minimum wage NI costs are just making it more difficult again for to secure a full cost recovery on this line in our budget. So it is unpalatable. It's not something that I would choose to do. It's not something I want to do particularly, but there is a requirement for us to balance our budgets. So
my understanding is that minimum wage it will hit, but it will hit everybody, but NI will not hit local authorities or schools in that case. So that's not an issue here. The issue, I think, is that we just need to be absolutely clear in this setting that we are already in a position where schools are holding vacancies in order to save money. Teachers are working additional hours to cover those vacancies, that we have youngsters in our schools who having to share one-to-one support in a way that doesn't meet their full needs, it's not a good picture, and we need as a committee to be fully aware of that.
Thank you for that. And of course, I think most of us are governors as well. So it's incredibly difficult to make decisions such as this one. But I know we're all bearing all the options in mind. So thank you very much for that. Do we have any, Councillor Keogh, please? Diolch.
It's what we're describing here today. I've been a councillor since 2004. 2008, the financial crash started, and then we had a government came and started the austerity in 2010. Year on year on year, cut after cut after cut. We arrive where we are today. I think that people have to be applauded how they've managed to keep us afloat. Not only that, the council's far worse off than us, and we will find that out at the end of this year, which councils will go through. But I think you're doing a remarkable job when you consider what's happened year after year after year and still keeping it afloat. It's not as if we would like it. It isn't. But I commend you all. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. And Councillor Rees, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Nice to be heard. Can I endorse the reservations that have been made? Certainly, it's something that when I was the chair of education, it's something we grappled with time after time after time. At the end of the day, if schools are going to have to find this cost, and it's going to be very difficult for some schools, then the only people who will suffer are the pupils, are the children. Because if staff are going to have to be made redundant, then it's the children who will suffer. And I would implore all councillors to think very clearly about this cut, because over the years we have tried to soften the blow, if you like, on these cuts. But if you're going to do this to this year, with the financial position that schools are in, then I think we're going to have a backlash from parents if children are not going to have the service that they deserve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Your comments are noted. Do we have any further questions on this? No, I don't see anybody. So if we move on to the Education Support Services, please, Rhiannon. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. This is even more straightforward, I think, I hope. So this is around staffing. A number of, I'd like just to emphasise no compulsory redundancies involved in this whatsoever. This is around flexible retirement. It's around posts that instead of going out and appointing without co-funding, we are using grant funding to fill in the short term. But at the minute we only need it for the short term, so that's worked out okay. Voluntary redundancy in there as well, and just a general restructure through the areas to try and what it means basically, isn't it, is that people will be working a little bit the people that are left will be working a little bit harder probably and picking up some of the other things. But equally, there's things perhaps we can change that we don't need to do anymore that have been doing traditionally that that'll just bring these savings in. But this just to reassure members really is working very well at the minute. We're along that process and so far it's quite smooth. Thank you.
Diolch, Rhiannon. I don't have any advanced questions on this. Anybody have anything to bring up today? No, I don't see anybody. Diolch yn fawr, Rhiannon. Thank you for all your work. So we move on to the Education Development Service, and we've got Chris, please. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. We were approached by Welsh Government to second one of our senior educational officers into a job for 2 days a week. That's halfway through its process now of its first year. So this is the saving that we make on the 2 days a week.
Lovely. Thank you, Chris. And I have Councillor Rogers, please. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. I think as far as this one, it's referring to grants, and Andrew headed me off earlier on in his opening statement, so I have no question on that now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Diolch. Thank you, Chris. And the next budget line is, Andrew, the pension and early retirement, please. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. These are costs that the council and therefore the various directorates have in respect of people who have retired early and taken their pension. So there's an early access to pension cost to individuals. This is a sum of money which is given to us by the actuary. Sadly, what this means that £15,000 is that somebody is no longer with us and therefore not receiving any pension. So this is probably the only budget suggestion in here which is actually already secured, because sadly whoever was getting that money is sadly no longer with us. So that's a straightforward one, but quite sad.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions, please, members? No, I don't see anyone. So moving on to Education Psychology Service, and Hayley Lurvy, please.
Thank you, Diolch, Chair. The Education Psychology Service, similar to the Learning Difficulty one, this is about a reduction in hours education psychologist post. So the percentage of the posts that we have, we'll offset against grants for this year. We, as Andrew said, we're as confident as we can be that we will have the grant, particularly with the Welsh Government review of the Additional Learning Needs Education Tribunal Wales Act and legislation. So that's the first post. Do you want me to take, oh, they're quite similar. Do you want me to go through the three of them? Similarly with the Learning Difficulties team, it's 1 day post that we'll offset against the grant funding. And then the commissioned OT post then is to do a specific piece of work with our secondary schools for 1 year. Happy to take any questions. Diolch.
Diolch. I have got Councillor Rogers and Councillor Reynolds down. Was this regarding the grant funding? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Reynolds, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to be sure. So we're offsetting against a grant, so there's no overall loss of service on this.
No loss of service at all. That was really important for us that we were able to do that and continue, particularly with the need that we're experiencing currently.
Yeah, given the issues around anxieties and mental health and things for young people, that's really important to know. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Any further questions for Hayley, please? Don't see anyone. So moving on to pest control. Kerry, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just two from me, and they're both fairly modest savings. The first, both of which they relate to the General Environment Health Service. The first is to deliver sort of a modest increase in fee income. That is as a consequence of the current sort of levels of service that we're expecting in terms of the pest control service, which is performing very well at the moment. So we see that we could achieve this additional income without increasing fees, which is important because we have increased fees in the last couple of years. And it's always a bit of a balancing act when you do increase fees, because ultimately you don't want those increases to be counterproductive, because you get to a point where you do start potentially turning people away from using the service. So it's something, given the levels of performance in the service, that's seen as achievable.
Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Reynolds, please. Unless Kerry covered the information that you want, maybe.
I think things are covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, Chair. Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
What the hell are these two items doing in an education setting?
Anybody want to answer?
Second, that's all.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you, Councillor Rees. Any further questions? Thank you. Just thank you, members, for your consideration this afternoon. It's obviously really important that we get. Oh, Councillor Keogh, please.
Could be, you see, that with the infestation, we've got a chap that comes along with a pipe, gather up all the rats, and the children end up following him. So
There we go, and that's your explanation for the day. So the report is for consultation purposes, therefore we note the report. I have no urgent items, so I bring the meeting to a close. Diolch yn fawr, prynhawn da i chi gyd. Diolch.
Thanks all. Diolch pawb.